I'm really excited to be back again today with our guest, Claire Hardie from LiverScan, who is an expert on liver health. So, welcome to this episode, Claire.
Thanks for having me.
Um, so, this is a longevity podcast. We're talking about health span and longevity. So, um, there's going to be some questions around, whether the liver has got any kind of relevance in that area. Um, But I'm going to get the listeners to think about the fact that our livers could determine how long we live. And also, by the time people begin to notice symptoms, some of the damage may already been done. So, from the statistics, we know that 1 in 3 people have some form of fatty liver disease, and most of them don't even know it. So, Claire, you're here today to help us talk about the liver and also the effect on longevity and health span.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try my best and engage everyone on their livers. It's something that not many people tend to think about. It's like the forgotten organ almost.
And why is that, do you think?
I think it's just not had as much media, and because people do tend to present so late, that by the time they present, a lot of them are at transplant stage. Whereas it's not had the same media as, for example, things like breast cancer or prostate cancer or heart disease, which are much more in the public eye. My liver's just this little forgotten entity, but it's so important. It's like the largest solid organ and has over 500 different functions. So without it, we're in trouble. Um, it's good because it can regenerate itself, which is again, it's a great organ for doing that, but it does cause its own issues because it doesn't show the symptoms then until it's generally too late.
So are you saying that the liver is able to regenerate itself, but only up to a certain point?
Yeah, up to a certain point, obviously, you can't abuse it forever and expect it to still function a bit like any other organ. It's got its tolerances. Um, so there's three kind of main things that would affect it, and it's diet, exercise, and alcohol. And unlike a lot of other diseases, it's not age related. So you can have liver disease at any age because you've had a poor lifestyle. So I've had people in the clinic who are in their early 20s who've got really poor livers. And I've had somebody in who's 92 that's got almost as good a liver as I do because he's just, he's not a saint by any means. He's still admitted to, having the odd alcoholic drink and, the odd takeaway and enjoying his holidays. But the majority of the time, he lives a healthy lifestyle. So it just shows that what you can do if you're sailing in here at 92, running up a flight of stairs, and your liver's as good as somebody in their 30s.
I love stories like that. And I also like the fact that, we're not asking people to go and book themselves into the monastery and live a life, where you can't actually enjoy anything. So you are saying there is a little wriggle room for enjoying your life and having a social element to it, as long as
Yeah,
you get.
100%. I'd be the biggest hypocrite if I sat here as the liver expert and said I didn't enjoy my life sometimes and didn't enjoy going on holiday. I mean, I've given myself a few scares in terms of the liver fat scale because I've done pre and post holiday tests on myself, and the changes in the scores in 7 days when I've gone on holiday are not that great. And it just shows what, going off my normal diet and exercise regime for a week does to me. But it gives me that motivation when I get back from holiday to then go back to my normal kind of healthy-ish lifestyle.
I love stories like this. I'm very data driven in my practice. I don't like guesswork. I like to know, when I'm dealing with patients, it's one of the reasons I do a huge amount of testing in my practice is I want to know. And it's an interesting, to have that kind of data. Like you say, you come back from holiday and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, 7 days has really shifted this. And there's that motivation to begin to move back again to your normal diet, which I think is so important. Tell me a little bit more about exactly that element. So within a few days, there is some change happening when you are, what is it that you're doing on holiday that's putting strain on the liver?
Okay, so So my average week, I would probably go to the gym maybe 3 times. I've got a little dog, so I'm out walking every day with the dog. So at least kind of 15,000 steps, if not more at the weekends. So I'm quite active. I eat a generally healthy diet, lots of fruit, lots of vegetables. I don't really eat red meat just out of choice. I don't really like it. So I eat a lot of fish. I still obviously eat the odd takeaway or go out and have a few drinks at the weekend with friends. But then on holiday, I was in Sicily for this example at a friend's wedding. So in 7 days, I pretty much did no exercise apart from walking to the beach, dancing at her wedding, and walking to a bar or restaurant. That's what we do on holiday. And then I didn't eat my normal diet. I ate every Italian food in sight, lots of pasta, lots of cheese, lots of gelato. She'd sent us a list of all the Sicilian delicacies. So I went full throttle, tried them all. Obviously drank, I don't drink daily at home. I drank daily on holiday. And my liver fat score, so it's on a numerical scale of 100 to 400. So on average, I sit at 190, which is in the green healthy bracket, meaning I have less than 10% fat on my liver. And in 7 days, I'd gone from 190 to 230, which is just within the healthy bracket still. However, 248 is the numerical cutoff for then going into that yellow bracket of liver fat. And I've never been that close to that bracket before. So it really scared me that in 7 days it had such a profound effect.
And
And
that
then,
took only 7 days.
yeah. So then I gave myself 2 weeks being kind to myself to, go back to my normal diet, exercise regime, my normal lifestyle when I'm at home. And I did a retest. And thankfully for me, I was back to my start point again after 2 weeks. But I've got the ability, obviously, with having the machine here, I can scan myself every 2 weeks. I wouldn't recommend that for your average person, but I think it's nice to have personal stories to tell clients and just show how short a time your liver can actually change in for the better or for the worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if people are living that kind of lifestyle, your holiday lifestyle,
Yep.
o- for kind of most of the time, what impact is that going to have on the liver?
So their liver fat's going to be quite high, which essentially means that your liver cells are replaced by fat cells. The more fat cells that your liver cells are replaced by, it can't function as it normally would. So people who are living that lifestyle could have over 70% fat accumulated just in the organ of the liver. So more people would correlate it with heart disease and clogged arteries. It's exactly the same, but for your liver. And if you don't do anything about that and continue it, even if you take alcohol aside, because most people think that you have to drink to have liver problems and you don't. So if you've got your liver 70% or more clogged with fat and you don't do anything, and then maybe you've left that for 5 years or more, then eventually you could end up having scar tissue on your liver, leading to liver cirrhosis and potentially even liver cancer way down the line. Maybe a small percentage, about 1% of people, but it's still there. It's still that risk. But people just don't make those correlations.
And once the scarring is there, the cirrhosis and scarring, is that reversible?
Up until a small level of scarring can be reversible or you can make improvements, but it's a bit like walking up a mountain. Once you get to the top, if you go over the edge, there's no return.
Okay, makes sense. Um, Gosh, okay, so you said it's not just alcohol. Did I hear you right? Because we tend to think of the liver and alcohol. And I know in my practice as well, when people come in and their liver enzymes are raised in the blood, some of them will say, well, I don't drink. I really don't have much alcohol. So is it anything else in addition to alcohol that can have an impact?
Yeah, so diet, exercise, and obviously medications or underlying health conditions, so certain autoimmune conditions. But if we take the ones that apply to everybody, diet and exercise, if you don't give your body the right nutrition and you're only eating, say, like fast food, processed foods, things that have high levels of saturated fat, that's not good for any of your organs, your liver included. And then exercise. So obviously, as you exercise, you burn more calories, you burn fat. So that all helps with your liver health as well as your general health.
Hmm. Can you be, this is a question I sometimes get as well. You're talking about fat as being the primary issue on the liver. Does this only, you know, is this only an issue for people who are overweight? Or can you be thin and still have problems with your liver if you're not generally fat?
No, you can 100. So when anybody walks through my clinic door, you can't judge the outside by the inside. It's not always a true reflection. So I've had people who've walked in here that are maybe like 50 to 60 kilos. They look very petite and thin. They've walked in here and say gym gear, but the gym gear is not used for going to the gym or exercise. It's just because it's comfortable, because we all got into that gym wear, leisure wear during COVID, and some people haven't got out of it yet. And then they've come into the clinic and, we've done their scan and their liver's been quite fatty. But to look at them, you wouldn't expect it because they have no external fat on them. And then you start having the discussions and they're like, oh yeah, I've probably just got, a good metabolism and I never cook for myself. I always eat out. I always just have like, packaged sandwiches, ready meals. I snack a lot, those type of things. So yeah, you definitely can't judge a book by its cover. We'll use that classic phrase.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
equally, I've seen quite large people walk in expecting in your head that they would have an issue and they don't.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's more about where the fat is located, right? If it's around the organs,
Yeah.
rather than subcutaneous fat just under the surface of the skin. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So again, this is a health span and longevity podcast. What does the liver have to do with health span or how? So talking about the difference between longevity and health span, it's not just how long we live, but how healthy those years are as well. Why are we talking about the liver here? What's the liver got to do with any of that?
So your liver's connected with your metabolic system. So potentially if you've got a fatty liver, you're more at risk for having other comorbidities such as developing type 2 diabetes, heart disease, kind of strokes. All of those things can be caused by having a fatty liver, but you might not necessarily know you've got the fatty liver in the first place until you've got all those other comorbidities. It can affect your sleep. It can affect your stress levels. So all of those things lead to a kind of poorer quality of life.
So you're saying it can affect your stress. Is it which way around is it? Does stress affect the liver or does liver health affect your level of stress? Or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of both, but I would say mainly if you're stressed, it can affect your liver. So if you think about a lot of people who are stressed, some people's coping mechanisms for stress might be to eat kind of comfort foods, which generally nobody's going to tell me a salad is their comfort food. It tends to be things like crisps, chocolate, biscuits, or alcohol. So when you're stressed, you're less likely to be focused on a healthier lifestyle in terms of the food that you're eating. Um, your liver also kind of deals with a lot of your hormones. So if you're stressed, it can't process everything as it should normally.
I was just about to get onto hormones because especially for women going through perimenopause, okay, and younger women as well. So when there's a lot of hormonal symptoms, um, does the liver have any part to play in kind of hormonal regulation and the kind of hormone disturbances that we see in people?
Yeah, I mean, so the hormone levels are my area of expertise, so I'm not going to delve too deeply in this because I don't want to say something that's incorrect, but it does produce and kind of process a lot of hormones. So if there's an imbalance anywhere, your liver will be affected in one way or another by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is definitely a correlation that I see in practice as well with my patients. Is that if there is any liver issue, then very often, hormone balance is an issue as well. So that I think the hormone element of the liver is really important as well. Um,
Essentially, I like to think of it that your liver keeps your body in balance or your body in equilibrium. So if anything's out, you should really go and, your liver's got as I said, those 500 different functions. So likely is if you've got something, whether it's hormonal, your liver will potentially have an impact in that because it's just got so much functionality.
I think another thing that really stands out for me is our classic blood tests that we do. So your liver enzymes, your gamma GT, AST, ALT, that you'll find in your blood work if you go to the GP and they do a
Yep.
liver test for you. Those very often can come up normal until fairly advanced liver disease, right?
Yeah. So it's been said, not just by my knowledge, it's been, said by medical professionals as well, as in like, doctors and liver specialist consultants, that some liver function tests or traditional ones can be unreliable. So you could have them done one week and have them done the next week, and they can be completely different. And that's down to the fact as well about your liver having so many different functions. So it's got a role in like your autoimmune system. It's got a role in filtering toxins out your blood. It's got the role in the hormones. So if one of those entities is slightly out, or if you've got a cold and your liver's producing antibodies, you might not have symptoms of that cold, but your liver's working overtime to combat it, then that can throw your liver bloods out. So there's so many things that can affect that, whereas the scan that we do in the clinic doesn't look at the kind of enzymes and proteins like a traditional liver function test does. It measures what's called your liver stiffness. So essentially, it's similar to an ultrasound. So it's a shear wave followed by an ultrasound wave, and the machine measures the time that it takes for that wave to travel from our machine through your liver and back. And then it produces two numerical values. So one represents a percentage of fat in your liver, and the other one represents the stiffness. So that could be in relation to scar tissue, it could be in relation to inflammation on your liver. And it's proven to be a very accurate assessment of your liver health. It's not a fully diagnostic tool, but it's like one piece in the jigsaw of everything, and it's more accurate assessment than just the liver function tests on their own.
When you use the word stiffness, I can't help thinking about getting a little older and a little stiffer and, probably quite similar to what's happening in our muscles and joints and things when we age, we get a little stiffer. Maybe our livers are getting a little stiffer as well.
Well, as I said before, it's not necessarily due to age. I've seen people of all ages, young with poor livers, old with amazing livers, and it's all just to do with the lifestyle that they've
Yeah,
led.
absolutely.
Um,
And I think what I'm seeing certainly in my practice, I've been in practice for 20 years, and I'm noticing younger and younger people being diagnosed with a fatty liver. Um, is that because we now have so much ultra processed foods, or we have so much um, toxins and things that our bodies have to deal with, which maybe even 20 years ago, we weren't having so much of that in the environment. Would that be playing a part?
Yeah, for sure. Like convenience in the modern lifestyle's a big thing that affects everyone's health. So whether that's convenience foods, whether that's the fact that we have a car and we drive and we walk less than we used to. Um, and then there was an article about primary school children, and I think it was around 5%, 5 to 10% of primary school children who start primary one and they're already obese. Which, if you look back 20 years, like, or 30, like if I think about 30 years ago, me going into primary one, I don't remember anyone in my class being obese. But if I drop my goddaughter off at nursery, you do see obese children even at nursery. So it's the convenience lifestyle that's, some of it's passed down through generations, some of it could be related to kind of poorer education, and more deprived areas tend to have poorer health outcomes, unfortunately. And convenience food is cheaper a
Yeah,
lot of the time,
absolutely. It is.
unfortunately, in
Yeah.
this day and age.
Cheaper
So,
and easier, right?
yeah.
It's really fast, it's easy, it's convenient, it's cheap. Whereas, cooking from scratch with real ingredients is obviously a lot more expensive and time consuming.
I mean, you can do it cheaply, obviously, but you've got to very much plan ahead. You've got to bulk cook. You've got to be very organised and disciplined to be able to make the healthy food. So it is possible. It just takes more time and effort, which a lot of people maybe don't have.
Yeah. Um, and really, a lot of this, so the podcast, the reason for me launching this is that um, I believe that a lot of the conditions that people suffer from later in life, 60s, 70s, 80s, is largely preventable. And it is interesting you talk about this comorbidities, right? Which means that if there's an issue with your liver, that tends to go hand in hand, maybe with diabetes, maybe with some other conditions as well. And it's something we do see a lot is that, when you develop one metabolic condition, you're likely to have another and another, and then the pill count stacks up as well. People end up on a number of different medications for diabetes and maybe also for a number of other metabolic issues. And you know, I believe that a lot of this is largely preventable. If we really start taking care of things, especially in our 40s and 50s. And I know a lot of people in their 40s aren't thinking that long term, they're not thinking 20, 30 years down the line.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we we don't really want to think that far ahead. We feel okay now, we feel well now. But I think the choices and things that we make in our even 30s, 40s, and 50s can really set us on a different trajectory of what our 60s, 70s, and 80s are going to be like.
Yeah,
And
100%.
a lot of that, I do believe, starts with liver health.
Yeah, we've actually seen, we don't really have many trends in the clinic in terms of people who come in the door. It's far and wide the reasons why people choose to come in. But one of the reasons that people choose is because they've got a big birthday. So any birthday that ends in a zero, essentially, they're like, this year I turn X, and I've decided that this is the year I want to start looking after myself, start looking after my health. And I'm getting, a variety of tests done to check where I'm at this point in my life and if there's anything I can do to improve or maintain the level of health I'm at the moment. And I think, as you said before, everything's numerical. And I think if you can know your numbers, essentially, I get and I don't understand why people want to live in fear don't want to know until they've got a symptom, but I would rather know where I am, be able to prevent something from happening in the future and take control of it now rather than wait until it's too late. Or, I think medicines are amazing. I have nothing wrong with, if I've got a headache, I'll reach for the ibuprofen. But at the same time, if it's something where I can do something with my own lifestyle through just, eating some more vegetables, going on a half-hour walk a couple of times a week, if I can do that as well as or instead of taking the medications to improve the quality of life that I'm going to have, then I think that's really important to do.
I agree. I agree completely. Um, because also it's interesting that you use the kind of analogy of the mountain. But I do think that you can abuse your body. We get away with it when we're young, don't we? When you're
Yeah.
20, 30, 40, you get away with it. But there is a certain point after which, if you then try and turn it around, it becomes a lot harder. So, I think being mindful of this at a younger age is really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. If you can take control of it younger and maintain that for longer, then it's much easier to implement. Change is hard for everyone, but if you can implement it earlier and just stick with it,
Mm.
the less years you've had your habits, the easier they are to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so a couple of just kind of things I want to throw out to you. We know that, do we still call it non-alcoholic fatty liver disease?
No, well, it's still referred to as that, but technically they changed the medical term to MASLT, so it's metabolic associated dysfunction. However, that doesn't mean much to people. So if you say to somebody you've got MASLD and you're talking about the metabolic system, your average person doesn't know what that means. If you say you've got non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it resonates a lot more with people. So we tend to just call it in here like fatty liver disease because that covers, it's a simple term that people can understand.
So there
Or
was
there's alcohol-related liver disease.
yes, alcohol related, but there is also this element of non-alcoholic, which I think is a really important message to for people that you can have liver disease without using a lot of alcohol.
Yeah,
Um,
and the reason they changed the name was they thought there was a bit of a stigma with having, being diagnosed with liver disease. A lot of people would then automatically assume that you're an alcoholic,
Mm.
even though it's had non-alcoholic associated liver disease. So that's why they took the word out essentially to try and negotiate any stigma associated with people admitting that they have liver disease.
Yeah, makes sense. What we do know is that a fatty liver is also an independent risk factor for heart disease and stroke. So there was a paper published in the journal Circulation in 2021, linking those two. So the liver and heart disease and stroke.
Yeah, so if somebody passes away of a heart attack, that's what's going to be put on their death certificate. They're not going to investigate that person as to why they had that heart attack in the first place. But if they did, you'd probably find that a lot of those people had fatty liver before they had the heart disease or as well as having the heart disease. But that's what got to them first.
Because there is also a very strong correlation between liver disease and cholesterol imbalances.
Yeah. And people are much more aware of like high cholesterol. And that classic diet sheet that you get for high cholesterol is essentially the same one that's good for your liver.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. Um, okay, and then so that's the heart and circulation. So we know that there's a very strong link there. What about brain health? I know there's some stats showing that liver disease could increase your risk for developing dementia by 50%, and that's pretty big, right? A 50% increase.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. It's not actually a study I've read, so I need to go do some reading on that one. So when I read your kind of little notes for the podcast, I was like, oh, I need to go and read. I know it can cause, like the poor sleep and cause a bit of brain fog. I'm not 100% sure on all the correlations
yeah.
on that. So I'll hold my hands up. Nobody knows everything and say, I need to read up on that part.
So that was the Journal of Hepatology in 2022. And I do think, so we also run a brain health clinic in Edinburgh Cognition. And we do find that in a lot of our patients with dementia, there is this element of liver health. And the reason why is a number of things. First of all, blood glucose imbalance is one of the key drivers for dementia. And we know that the liver also plays a role in regulating blood glucose. There's a vascular role in the development of dementia, so kind of your blood vessels. So we've just spoken about that connection with, the blood vessels, heart disease, and stroke. And then also a really, really important role of the liver, which most people will think about, is its capacity to detoxify and, clear out all the toxins that we are exposed to on a daily basis. And that also means keeping the brain clear from that influx of toxins.
I think that's really interesting, and it's definitely, I've learned something new in the last couple of minutes and something that I'm interested to go and read more about.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about lifestyle habits for the liver. You have spoken a lot about diet and exercise, but do we know which diet? Would it be Mediterranean diet? That's, what would you say would be the key advice for people in terms of diet?
So the Mediterranean one's the one that most people would refer to. So something that's kind of high in pulses, vegetables, less red meat, more fish. kind of less saturated fats, so less butter and cheese, have replaced those with like a nice high grade olive oil. Nuts and seeds are good, obviously, in certain, if you do anything in excess, it's going to have a detrimental effect. So yeah, the Mediterranean diet, though there's also been some research on intermittent fasting. So it really depends what works out best for you, or you could do like a combination of things, but just be mindful, I would say, of what you're putting in your body. And, there's nothing wrong with thinking on a Friday, that's my treat day, I'm going to go and have, a coffee and a bit cake, as long as you're not doing that on a daily basis. And coffee is also proven to be good for your liver. So the average, I think, is about 3 to 5 cups a day, but obviously not like a latte with full fat milk. 5 of those a day are not great because that's a lot of calories. But like a nice black coffee or a little bit of milk is also good for your liver.
It's interesting what you say about coffee. There is there's quite a lot of mixed evidence out there, but more and more, I think the evidence shows that good quality coffee is actually beneficial for lots of functions within the body, the liver and the heart and the brain. I think one of the things that I see people doing is, you may be going to Starbucks and getting yourself a latte, um, or even with some of the plant milks, which ends up having quite a lot of emulsifiers and sugars and things in it as well. So, like you say, coffee in itself is a good thing, but maybe a black coffee or a little splash of milk in it, not having any of these additional things added in, as well.
Yeah.
Um, so what about supplements for liver function, things like milk thistle, uh, N-acetylcysteine, choline? Are these any of the things you would recommend, or are you mainly getting people to do this through lifestyle?
I mainly get people to do it through lifestyle. If they have said to me, I'm thinking about taking milk thistle, is that good? From the research I've read, again, it's got mixed impacts. So some people saying it does have a very beneficial effect. Other people say it's got kind of no effect, but I haven't read anything to say that it's had a detrimental effect on the liver. So if people want to take kind of additional supplements, there's nothing wrong with that as long as it doesn't interfere with any kind of prescribed medications that they're going to take. So advise them, maybe if they're on any other medications that are being prescribed by their GP, to go and double check before they start taking any additional supplements to make sure it's not going to interact with their prescribed medication. But I normally just mainly focus on lifestyle changes.
Mhm. And Clay, tell me, where can listeners find out more about getting a liver scan?
So they can have a look at our website. So it's just www.liverscangroup.co.uk. I'm sure we can put a link to it and maybe some comments under the podcast. We've also got a LinkedIn page, or the British Liver Trust also have a wealth of information on their website about liver health, about the different types of scans or tests that you can get done, and all the different types of liver disease.
And I think, for a lot of people, um, it can be a little overwhelming to make these changes, kind of knowing what to do. And also, there's also the difference between knowing what you should be doing and actually doing it. That kind of psychology of change. So um, we have, in collaboration with each other, put together a really lovely metabolic program, which takes people through a journey of, looking at liver health and the actionable real steps that they can do, practical strategies for being able to make change. And I think it's a really great way to be able to look at you know doing a scan, for instance, making some of these changes, and then a few weeks later going back to repeat the scan to see whether the things you are doing is making a difference and having an impact.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is really important to help people along in their journey and not just do the scan, say change your lifestyle for the better and send them out the door. Like that's not very helpful to people. But as you said, we've worked together, we've put the metabolic package where it does guide people through making those changes. And it'll be really interesting to see the improvements, because we do have a couple of case studies on our website as well from clients that have been in, that have, you know, gone on their own journey and made different lifestyle changes that are really interesting to read. And it's always nice to see a positive story from a client and see the look on their face that when you give them their new numbers for their liver health and they've improved, they're so delighted that the changes they've implemented have made a difference, and it motivates them to continue on with those changes as well.
It can be a huge motivational driver to see those numbers changing and see that the things you're doing is having an impact, because sometimes it's so difficult to know, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've given up drinking for a month, dry January, or I've done all these things. Um, it's sometimes really difficult for people to know whether the things they've done actually really have an impact. So
Yeah.
it is
And the
nice.
FibroScan itself, it's non-invasive. It takes 10 minutes. So to take 10 minutes out of your life to come and check your liver health or check the improvement, it's not really a lot of time.
Absolutely. And I think given that we now know that it has such impact on so many metabolic systems, and also even if you're not somebody who's drinking a lot of alcohol, um, there could still be an issue with your liver, even if you're not a heavy drinker.
Yeah, the latest case study on our website was about an ex-nurse who is a teetotaler, and she thought, you know, she was a medical professional, she was teetotal, she wouldn't have an issue with her liver. And she went and she was en route to having kind of liver cirrhosis in her numbers. And she's gone on a journey over the past year to change her diet and exercise because alcohol was never a factor for her. And she has now made her kind of fibrosis score or liver stiffness score within the normal ranges. So that was like a really good improvement. She's had 4 scans over the space of a year to kind of keep her going throughout the year. But yeah, she's a prime example of somebody that's teetotal that had liver issues.
I love stories like that. I love stories where people are able to proactively take charge of their health and do something to
Yeah.
turn it around. And I
She
think,
showed me a photo of herself. She brought in a family picture, and I, like, without exaggerating, couldn't pick her out the lineup because I hadn't met her a year ago. She'd had like an NHS scan. It was her first scan before coming to us after making some changes, and she looked unrecognisable with the amount of weight she'd lost as well.
it's I do love stories like this. When people really take control of their health, and I think a big part of what we're trying to do as well is to empower people, to say, there are things you can do. You are able to impact your liver, and then it's not just your liver. You're impacting so many other body systems through that. I think it's a really, really important message for people. And actually, it is interesting when you talk about that the same advice that would be given for heart health is pretty much the same for the liver, because ultimately those connections are there. There is the strong correlation between different body systems.
Yeah, and I totally agree. We're all here. That's what we're here for as well, to empower people to take control of their own health, to be in the know about their health and, you know, live life to the full.
Mhm. Well, Claire, I really appreciate your time today. It's been fantastic having you here on the call. And I hope that that has inspired people to take some action and to think about the liver perhaps in a little different way.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation to be on the podcast. And I look forward to seeing all the other episodes that you're going to do as well.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.